Have you ever got a prompting from God? What do you do when you get that prompting? Our guest this week, Rev Ken, talks to us all about how he's responded to his calling, some of which has led him to feeding thousands of people every week living rough in the streets of Sydney. Join us on this week's episode of Filthy Hope. Welcome back to another episode of Filthy Hope. If it's your first time here, for whatever reason, welcome. We're so glad you found us. We're so glad that you're with us today. On this show, we spend time in the grey spaces where Jesus, life and culture intersect. I'm your host, Jonty, and I'm joined by Rev Ness, my co-host.
Hey, brother.
How are things?
I'm good. I'm really excited about this convo today.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Yes.
We're recording this after we've already had our guest, Rev Ken in the studio with us. So we'll jump over to that interview shortly. As you'll come to realise as we get into that interview, he's a lot of fun but also has such great insight.
And he's he's a seasoned professional, like a silver fox of the church. Isn't he just?
Well, you did talk about before he left all the nasty things we could say about him now that he's gone.
Yeah, that's right.
I think Silver Fox is a nice middle ground there. Yeah,
and he's so humble.
He actually is. Yeah.
Epic ministry through St. Stephen's, which you'll hear in the podcast today. But he is just humble and gentle and gracious. He's a top dude.
Yeah, so we'll jump over to that in a second. But I thought before we do that, we could do Event Central. So Ness.
Play the music.
What is grinding your gears today, Ness?
Okay, super pissed off. I had the weirdest thing happen. I'm less pissed off than I was when it happened on Monday.
That's good.
So it's notched down. It was a 10 out of 10, and I'm now down to about a 4 because I've got a solution.
10 out of 10's pretty...
It was pretty... Well, I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because I grind and clench my teeth, and I have done since I was a little girl.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I've been feeling a bit of stress and anxiousness, and I think that plays out at night time.
Yeah.
So I clench my teeth, and I've got this routine. I often will wake up at 4-ish in the morning, flick it out of my mouth, and pop it next to the bed. Well, I've been minding Mouse, Aurora's dog. And
I know where this is going.
Yeah, Mousy, little Mousy was sleeping next to me, all good. I'm in my constant routine. I'm just excited that I've managed the mouth guard till 4 a.m. in the morning.
Yep.
And I haven't spat it out at 11:30. And I then start to hear this. And I'm thinking, wonder what the dog's licking. And I'm just asleep. And then I hear crunch, crack, crunch. And I'm thinking, shit, that doesn't sound very good. And you know that half sleep thing?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I think, shit! And I'm like, steam coming out my ears, and I sit up and the dog is so happy. It's got my mouth guard in her mouth, and she's got it in small pieces. There's pieces.
My gosh.
So I have to get the silicone because in my mouth guard I have metal pieces in it.
Yeah.
It like clips in and holds in around my teeth. And I have to get the small 3 bits that she's broken off the mouth guard out of her mouth.
Yeah.
And then I'm devastated because then I'm worried because if I don't wear the mouth guard and I'm clenching and grinding, I've cracked teeth. And I've ended up with having to have root canal, which is super expensive, followed by a crown, which is super expensive. And my husband jokes that it's a $5,000 a year investment that we have in my teeth, which look lovely but are clearly not great because I crack the bastards. So super upset that this mouth guard will end up costing me about $850 by the time I go back to the dentist, have the moulding done and have it sent off to be made, which I've now done.
Great.
Dentist was quick, did a quick turnaround. I don't have the new mouth guard. I'm just waiting. So that grinded my gears.
Ground your teeth too, by the sounds of it.
Grounded my teeth, absolutely. Jaw ache just thinking about it, Jonty. So it wasn't great, but I've got a good outcome now.
That's good.
Not as distressed as I was on Monday.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that because that...
Yeah.
that
but what's
does not sound fun.
With the dog liking the slobber on my mouth guard? doing the. It was just like gross.
I just found something to chew on, I guess.
Yummy.
Yeah. I don't. We don't have a dog. I'll say yet. Partly because when growing up, my neither of my parents had any interest. Partly for reasons like that. Like we don't want a dog chewing on stuff in the house. And like
that's
all of that stuff.
It's a thing. It definitely is. Yeah. And Aurora said to me, talk about blame the victim. Aurora says to me, well, Mum, you shouldn't have left it beside the bed. And I said, well, it's my normal routine, Slink, and it's just that I had Mousy sleeping with me because you were away and I had her for the night. Yeah. And she, terrible. Anyway, all fixed.
Great.
It's just a mouth guard.
Well, after that, honestly, that's annoyed me just thinking about that. So that's a perfect Ventential. We're now going to jump over to our interview with Reverend Ken Day. We'll see you on the other side. Have fun. Well, we're joined in studio by a very special guest, Reverend Ken Day. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me here.
I'm thrilled you're here. So for people that are meeting you for the first time, perhaps, give us a little glimpse into who Ken Day is. What's the blurb for people that are meeting you for the first time?
Yeah. At the moment, I am serving in ministry at St. Stephen's Uniting Church, which is in Macquarie Street in Sydney. And I am part of a family with a wonderful, wonderful family. And we all give thanks to God for each other. And we like each other. All these years on, we still all like each other.
Oh, that is so great for somebody that comes from a dysfunctional family. It's really encouraging to hear.
We do. I do say today. You never know. You never know in life what's around the corner. But we've got this far and still all really like each other and their partners and our grandchildren.
How many grandkids do you have, Ken?
4.
Wow.
Yeah. Sue will be pleased that I was able to say it like that.
Yeah,
4.
that was impressive.
Yeah, didn't have to count.
And Ken, how long ago did you become a grandpa?
Yeah.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's good.
So Max, he's our oldest.
And
he's
Does he walk?
Yeah, he walks.
Okay.
He's in year 5.
Okay, walks well.
Maybe year 6, but I think he's in year 5 in school, primary school.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Can you? The reason I'm asking is purely because I'm going to be a grandma in about 8 weeks.
Yes, it's
for
exciting.
the very first time,
Yep.
and I'm wondering what that actually feels like to be a grandparent.
Yes.
Is it? Can you put that in a
it's
snapshot?
Well, I love it because when we don't live near each other, we're all in our different areas. But when we come together, they like being with us. They really love being with Sue. But if I say, do you want to come to the church, for example? They like to come along and help me do stuff. They're little task-oriented kids, or like the fact that it's such a big building, they can just go crazy in it for a while because there's no one else there.
And
so
Ken,
we do those sort of stuff.
It's
together.
such a cool church, St. Stephen's, with that really fancy high altar, and you've got pews for choirs, and it's like, when was that place built?
90 years ago this year. So it was built to look old, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I thought it was older than that.
Yeah, that's what everyone says.
And in an
That's what people say about me. Oh, I thought you were older than that. Haven't you retired yet? Are you still alive?
Ken, a pivotal part of Sydney, Macquarie Street, smackers in the middle, opposite the Parliament House.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Right opposite.
What a strategic location for the Presbyterian Church to think to build.
Yes, it was their 5th place. They started in Scots, which is still there.
Yeah.
And then I would call it a church plant.
Yep.
Something happened in the Church of Scotland and the Church of Scotland and the Free Church of Scotland or something. And so back here in Australia at one of their meetings, they thought maybe the split they've had in Scotland, we should do too.
Wow.
Think that one through. And so by the end of the meeting, they decided that they would plant another congregation, and some left Scots, and we're the ones that left Scots. I believe we were the more conservative people
How
who left.
interesting.
And then, strangely, we left and joined in with some Methodists.
Holy dooly. What were they thinking?
I don't know. And then they moved again and again and moved next door to Parliament House. They built a church there, an iron church, and brought like a prefab, an IKEA church brought out from Scotland, all
true
the
story?
metal, all screwed together, form part of where now the library is, the new building
Is
of
that
the library.
right? Wow.
Yeah, so they were there bumper to bumper with the Parliament House.
Incredible.
And then moved into Phillip Street. There was already a church there, another Presbyterian church. They joined in with them. So I think there were varieties of Presbyterian church, like a cereal pack, you know.
So because our church at Willara is a Presbyterian church too.
Your
So
building is older than
much.
ours.
So ours is about 150 years old.
Is it that old?
Yeah, mate, we're old.
Yeah, wow. I didn't
100,
realise.
oh, maybe, sorry, 140? Maybe 140
yeah,
years?
yeah.
1800 and
Still
something?
triple figures
Old,
is-
mate,
yeah.
old church. So I wonder if they were friends with your original congregations.
I'd say they were. Their horse probably could go that far from there to there.
Yes.
Because I know that Vaucluse, one of the governors really didn't get on with someone and expelled him out to what we call Vaucluse now.
Vaucluse House.
And
Yes.
and so he sent him out to there
He
into the
did,
bush.
yes.
And because that must have seemed like a long way away. Well, you're not far from a long way away.
And do you know how he got? I was only at Vaucluse House a couple of weeks ago for a visit because I wanted to check it out myself. Do you know how he got his family to church on Sundays? They would actually go to St James Church, Anglican Church in City, right up the road from
Yes.
you. And he had a boat. So he would either put the family on the boat and travel from Vaucluse, obviously, to Circular Quay, that area, or in and around the cove there.
Yeah, Farm Cove,
And
yeah.
then probably get on some bougie Uber horse-drawn thing.
I read saying Uber.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Horse-drawn Uber. Did you like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah.
me being funny. And then take it all the way up George Street or Pitt Street or Macquarie Street.
Yes.
All the way up. Or it was a half day in the horse-drawn carriage from Vaucluse House all the way to St James.
And his kids loved it because by the time they got there, they were singing the last hymn. And so they were there in time
Perfect
for morning
timing.
tea.
Yeah,
Praise
yeah.
Jesus,
Yeah,
Mum and Dad, we
perfect.
can just
Yes.
do the cup of tea
Yeah.
and the scones.
The coffee cart would have been out the front.
Might
Drawn
invest
by
in
horses.
Yeah, horse and cart.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
I
good.
love
Yeah.
that. Oh, that's a very funny story. So incredible building that you're in. And
Yes, it is.
it's beautiful and it has such a rich history. And there's that fancy hall underneath it.
Yes, the Ferguson Hall.
What's the
Yes.
story with Ferguson?
Yes.
Who was Ferguson?
Ferguson was one of the former ministers, Reverend John Ferguson. He came to us from New Zealand, and that's where he'd been serving in the Presbyterian Church, and came over to St Stephen's, and he flourished in ministry, and the church flourished with
Under him.
with that ministry. And then he became the Moderator General of the Presbyterian Church of Australia. That's equivalent to our President of the Assembly. And he was a go-getter. He was spoken of highly. He not only spoken of highly, but he did stuff.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And so the Arminian people still come to the church to acknowledge what he did for the Arminian refugees. He launched the Sydney Appeal for the Arminian at the time of
Turn of the century?
Yeah,
the
yes.
1900s?
Yes, when the Armenian genocide was taking place, he said we need to help these people and make space for them.
That must have been a very progressive way of thinking, I would have thought,
Yes,
in the day.
I think he was a progressive thinker. He was never in the building we're in now. He was when he would have been in our Phillip Street building, which is now where the Reserve Bank is, just around
Oh,
there. There's
okay.
a plaque you'll see where it mentions it. But to bring Martin Place through to Macquarie Street. They needed to demolish buildings and we were sticking out halfway. We would have been noticed because you would run into it all the time.
Wow.
But they realised that needed to go. And so the Presbyterian Church bought Burdekin House across the road from Parliament. Burdekin House was a bit of a gathering place for a whole variety of people for getting together, talking, from artists to politicians. It was they had a huge ballroom in this house, and I'd say like a smoking room,
was
lounges,
it a house
fireplace.
or like a whole bunch? Was it when you say a house? Was it like a traditional house or a building?
A building
rooms?
that they would have called a house, Burdekin
In the day.
House. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. When it was being demolished, there were protests about them demolishing that to make way for the church. So sometimes it does help me remember, sometimes when we protest about churches being demolished, we did the same.
Yeah, yeah.
Often that's the case, isn't it? When we protest about something and we think, how dare they? And then we look back in our history and we find out we actually did the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, change. We hate change, don't we?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a sense of being in ministry in a place that, I mean, so many places in Sydney have such a rich history that goes back to like the turn of the century and even earlier. Do you have a sense of taking part in like that history, like in your day-to-day ministry, or is it something that if you think too much about it, it kind of, because I don't know, I sometimes think about whether it's where we are in ministry at Uniting Heart and Soul or at Tamara Uniting or anywhere else, I find if you think too much about like the history that you're taking part in, it can really be like spur you on, but it can also be like, oh my gosh, am I like doing the right thing by the saints that went before me? Like, is that something that you consider ever?
It does come into the mix, but in this way, I firstly, we remember the people who walked there before Burdekin House.
Yeah.
The First Nations
the
people.
First Nations people whose feet were on that dirt. That comes to my mind when I remember that when 60 Martin Place was being built, which is our neighbour, their building leans over us. When that was being built, when they had to dig down around our foundations, there had to be a heritage archaeologist present to just bear in mind what they might see or find.
But how excellent.
In that. But it always reminds me there were other feet here
First.
before the buildings were. And so we think about that because some people always want to jump to Macquarie and his feet. And we jump first to their feet before that.
Yes.
So we have a strong belief. And when I say we, sometimes it might be all in my head.
Yeah.
But I always hope the congregation has that sense as well. And I get the feeling they do, or they're happy exploring this, that with our neighbours, we want to know who our neighbours are. We want to be good neighbours. Canon Callahan once said, and he's one of my gurus on effective ministry, he said that if we were to disappear out of Macquarie Street, how long would it take for the neighbours to know we've gone?
Interesting.
And he says that's the question for every congregation. If you were to disappear, how long would it take for your community to know you're not there anymore? Would it be 6 months later that they'd say, you remember those cars that used to park out in our street on a Sunday morning? Have you noticed they're not here anymore? Or would it be within a day? What's happened to?
It's interesting. If we flip that analogy, I think I've been in ministry for 5 years at Uniting Heart and Soul, and we moved from Double Bay up to the Wallara Big Church. And I think it's taken and that church wasn't operating on Ocean Street as a gathered congregation on Sunday mornings, and it hadn't done, I believe, for about 30 years.
That long?
Only
Really?
for special
Wow.
events. So I treated the move like a church plant. I was planting some original people, not many, a handful, into this new space, in this old new space as a newish congregation. And do you know what? I think it's taken the community 5 years to know that we're there.
Yeah.
5 years to actually register.
Yes.
Oh, they're there. That lady's there. Oh, that funny, noisy
That
lady.
lady that puts her phone number up on the
screen.
on the front notice board and says, "Call me, come have a chat, come here, have a cup of coffee." Like, yeah.
But I think it's honestly taken that long for them to realise that the doors are open, that we are there, and we aren't going anywhere.
Yes, well,
and we love you.
Take heart, because people still say to me, I didn't know this was a church.
Wow.
They come along, didn't know you were here. They step inside, they come into the foyer with their reference for their doctor.
Yep.
And because we have 3 doors and they saw that one said 197, then they think, well, the next one must be 195 and that door must be 193. So they come in and they would like to see the doctor. And our foyer, it probably doesn't look necessarily churchy.
No, it doesn't.
It looks
it's very
old
grand.
building, yes.
And where is the lift to take you to the bougie Macquarie Street doctor?
That's right. Because all along are old buildings and we're level with them all. So we don't stick out. We're not in a plaza or anything like that. And I say to them, well, this is actually a church. They want to have a little argument with me about that. No, I've got it, 193, it says here and this. And I say, if you stick your head inside those doors, you'll see a very big room.
Yeah.
And they will, and they're so surprised. But I then offered to do the operation for them.
How does that go?
No,
How are you
they've
in
never
those
taken
jobs?
me up on that.
No,
Probably because of my bill. It'd be very expensive.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be
to
us.
cover my lawsuit.
And the insurance,
Yes. Yeah. So,
you're a funny man.
Yeah, so people say the same. Or we tried to have the building open as much as possible.
Yes.
Because there was a time where it was locked all the time.
Yep.
There was a time when there was scaffolding in front of it. I say that while we've got scaffolding at the moment in front of it.
Yep.
Hoping that people might notice when they walk into the scaffolding. And,
there's a church.
Bonk, what's this? And realise, it's a church building. So people still don't know we exist. And I find that a great challenge. How do we now help them to know we're here? The next thing. Because the ministry of the church isn't about the building, but when you're in a heritage building, you can't say, well, we're actually going to move away from this.
No.
We've got it. Because the wider community, not the church community, have said you've got to look after this building.
Yep.
And you get no financial support to look after it. It's all from what the church can raise.
Yes.
But you're required to look after it. So we have to make the most of that building. So while ministry isn't draw them into us, or especially in a building like ours, draw them into the fortress, we are pleasantly stuck with a beautiful building that we have to think, what can we do? Let's make the best of this rather than bemoan that we're in this building or because it's a heritage building outside, inside, and all the furniture.
Yeah, it's epic.
Everything is heritage.
Gorgeous.
So it's a great challenge, a great challenge.
And you do really modern bougie things in that really ancient place that brings it into the relevance of church today. I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit about the epic music ministry that you run in and through St. Stephen's and how can people come and be a part of it and hook into the different music ministries that you run?
Music styles. This is the first congregation I've been in where I arrived for a Sunday worship that was what I would class as classical. And my previous congregations where I served, like Terrigal and Cogra, were a different style of music altogether. And when I was up far north at Mullumbimby and Byron and Bangalow and that area, the music was whatever you could get, and people who would offer. And a lot of people had skills. I came to St. Stephen's where all that, let's gather all our skills. The music was very professional.
Yeah, wow.
So professional. Robed choir.
Oh, can we just hold it for a second? The robed choir piece, okay, can you take us back to where we're in this conversation, okay?
Sure.
Because I'm going to get all in love with this robed choir thing because I have this total Whoopi Goldberg, John Belushi visual of robed choir in the magnificent stalls of your church. Can you paint that picture for us, Ken?
Sure. Well, when I first arrived, the robed choir gathered out in the choir rooms and I gathered with them, and then the choir would walk in, all robed, and the congregation stood. And the order of service had in it to stand for the entrance of the clergy and choir. I thought, this has got to go. I found that really
Weird.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I thought, maybe stand for the first hymn after those grand words, let us worship God, now we'll stand.
Yeah.
And not for the entry of the clergy. It made it look too much like a courthouse and a judge.
Or like MLC school, normal church services.
Yeah. So we had to work on that, but how do we get the choir in and stop the people from standing? So for a while they would just wander in pleasantly, but I tried to just lower the formality.
Yeah, right.
Because I thought the formality was strange because it was a formal-looking building, formal choir, formal organ, small congregation.
Yeah. And your cartwheeling down the aisle wasn't going to work?
No, it wasn't. Yeah, I could see. They didn't know whether to stand and then sit every time, whether as I rolled. So over time, we moved the choir to meet out in the foyer and then to sing on the steps of the church and then walk in.
Oh,
because
wow.
How do we move what's happening in there
out there? What a wonderful thing.
And because they're such an amazing choir who can sing without
a cappella, they do the thing.
Without the piano and organ playing, they could just sing and have people walking past stunned at this choir of mixture of ages. There's about 20 in the choir, half would be under 25, and these people robed, standing on the steps, singing. And then the organ would pick up, and then we'd walk in. We don't process like St. James, I need to tell you. At one stage, we had to put someone in front of them walking in because the first going in were about 19-year-old basses who think they were still on the rugby league field and went very quickly.
Push the line.
So we had to slow them down because the people up the back are running to keep up.
Right.
So, but it moved. So we kept that formality. We brought in a procession, which is very not us. But then the people stood during that, and then we went straight into the first song.
Oh, love
unannounced. So because the choir would just lead us in.
Yes.
The song they just sang on the steps, we would sing again with the whole lot
beautiful.
to try and get a sense of flow, theatre.
Yes.
Or having had charismatic ministry, a sense of the awe of God.
Yeah.
Rather than hymn 53.
Yeah, let's stand now.
Yeah, so they were happy for screens to be put in.
Wow.
COVID was a blessing for some things.
Yes.
And that was one because hymn books went.
Yes.
And even though we had them printed, and we still print for people who find the screens difficult to see, it was the time, let's get screens so people can just read and sing and...
Lift their heads up.
Yeah, lift their heads up. And so we start with that. Always I keep thinking we need to increase the sense of awe, but we're never going to get to that point where we suddenly realise how awesome God is, because that's always something still to be explored and experienced more and more and more and more. And that's a bit like... when I said I'm going out to Broken Hill, there is always more to discover about God, always more, and what happened when I was ordained, say in 1984,
Wow.
then each year, while I've had long ministries in places, the whole idea is that the ministry, say today in 2025,
Yep.
is not like the ministry it was in 2020 or as it was in, and so on. It needs to be that you can see we're growing and changing as the community changes to whom we are to witness and help people understand that we have a God who's keen to reconcile and a God who sees everybody as part of the ministry as the Holy Spirit comes in and moves in their life. So it's what happened last week won't be the same as what happened next week.
Yeah, isn't
so
that great?
An over-formal thing where you could lie in bed and think, I know what they're doing now, because they did that last week, and as they always will be until the Lord returns. We want people to always be, I don't know what's going to happen next, because that gets us prepared for whatever God's going to do, because we're never sure what God's going to do next, except we know it will be good.
Yes.
But we're not sure what it'll be.
On the way to the next
but
thing.
it'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get back to the music ministry stuff in a sec,
yeah,
but
I
also
wandered there.
Good job.
I really want to talk to you more, just briefly before we go back to that, about this idea. Like, I don't know. I've grown up in the Uniting Church, and my experience and my observation has been that in terms of the liturgy, but particularly the musical worship, we're a bit allergic to excitement. We're a bit allergic to, like you say, like the awe and the,
Fun?
The fun. A lot of the time, our feet are nailed to the ground, and that's a style and a thing, and that's all well and good. But I wonder for you, like when you talk about just that example of engaging with how to actually get the most out of that choir, for example, where does that come from for you in terms of how you understand the function of liturgy and worship in generating awe? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like boring and stodgy. Like, how do you approach that? And is there something behind that drives that for you?
Yes, yeah. I think when we gather, I want to just give credit to Mark, our organist, and Hugh, our choral director. They are the ones who know music.
Yep.
I can just sing along.
Yeah.
But when we have an idea, they're willing to give it a go now.
Oh, I
At
love
first,
that.
maybe they thought, well, Mark was when I arrived, and at first he might have thought, what's this
Steady
idea?
on, like,
Steady on. But I can see that he and I have a way of communicating about these things, and he knows that I respect his ability.
Yep.
He is very, very good on that pipe organ.
Amazing.
And we have scholars in there on the organ, and they are incredible too. And Hugh conducts is the music, the choral director. So I learned now that, because I used to be a primary school teacher, that it's more than just holding a ruler in your hand and going like that, and teaching them if I were a butterfly and hoping that they'll give their life to Jesus. When we worship, it has to be more than, and probably in light of what I just said, that you feel like you're at a school assembly.
Yeah.
So there has to be space that if the Holy Spirit guides or says or stops things, that space has to be allowed.
Yeah.
Because the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Jesus, has to be what's
Running the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that we do leave different to when we
Yes.
arrive.
Love that.
That
Amen,
who we
brother.
were at 10 a.m. is not who's leaving at, I'm going to say 11 a.m. The congregation would say, in your dreams, if only you'd finished by 11 a.m. But we are changed. So there is decency and order, but there is also ordered liberty. Two phrases. As Presbyterians, we all say everything was done with decency and in order.
Is
And
that right?
uniting in worship is that there is ordered liberty.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
and maybe that's one of the reasons I came into that movement
Yes.
known as the Uniting Church. I thought I was I was a continuing Presbyterian and moved into the Uniting Church, and I thought I was joining a movement, and that's what I still hold on to. Whilst we are a denomination, for me, the heart of it is we are a movement through the community in Australia, or wherever we're planted. And for me at the moment, it's in Macquarie Street.
Yeah, I definitely, probably largely just because it's the language that people around me use, but I often will usually just refer to the Uniting Church as a movement as opposed to a denomination.
Yes.
Technically it is a denomination, but it does feel like we're taking part in something that, and even in the name, it's not the United Church,
No.
it's the Uniting Church.
Yes.
Like we're part of something that's ongoing and continuing.
On the way.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
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 And so with the music, we have a variety of music and that's increasing. So Porter's Gate puts out some music, so we've just started using some of their music as well. But inch by inch, I do it. Go in with a revolution, expect a counter-revolution. So
that's
why
great.
do that? Why not just introduce gradually so that you don't have to spend all your time fixing up the revolution you created,
Yes, and putting
or
out
the
fires.
counter-revolution, I should say, when you just take your time, Ken. Go in gradually and then listen to what the people are saying, or when you get home, I see how Sue found some of it. Sue is from the Roman Catholic Church, and so singing was a surprise to her when she came into our church. 9 a.m. Sunday morning.
Freedom to sing.
Or why are you singing so much? And how come people are going to church at 9 a.m. Sunday morning after you've been all out at your disco the night before?
Yeah,
Sue
right.
loved music, dancing. Yeah. No one else is watching this, are they? If I was
No,
to
it's
say
just you,
she
brother.
wanted to be a go-go dancer in a cage.
Yeah,
So that was Sue's aim.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would have been in the cage with her.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I
so
thought you'd
don't
find
put
that okay.
under the bus, brother.
No, no, I still say she could still do it. So I really need to hear what people who aren't cultured in Protestant, Presbyterian, my kids know nothing of Presbyterian except through their father.
Yep.
But to hear what they're saying, because sometimes we'll say things in the church like, oh, in this new song, but I know that that's not actually the sort of music that you would listen to if I was with my kids.
And if we refer to a new song that's actually probably 20 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
yes, yeah. And sometimes I go to places and I think, and they're singing a new song and I think, well, the idea of singing in church is for us all to do this shoulder to shoulder, this community together. And that's not, it's the person on the piano and the singer, they're having a great time.
Yes.
And we're watching.
Yeah.
And I don't find that participatory for worship.
John Humphreys says exactly the same. It drives him nuts.
Yeah.
He absolutely takes the piss out of the idea of the Pentecostal experience of awe and wonder through song. He absolutely... Gee, I hope I've quoted him correctly.
No,
here.
yeah.
He
I've had many conversations with him
Yes, he gets
about it.
angry with me about the hands in the air piece.
The critique from him, and I'm sorry, John, if you're listening, I'm not getting this correct, but
Yes.
is that it's more of a performance than a
Correct.
participatory thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is, I don't disagree with. There's more nuance to it than that, I think, but I don't disagree that musical worship, because again, the other thing John would say is when we refer to worship and we're just talking about music, that's completely missing the point of what worship in its fullness is.
Yes.
Musical worship should be a participatory thing that
Yes.
everyone takes part in collectively, and the person leading is as important as the person at the back who's there for the first time humming along because they don't quite know the words.
Yes.
And they're on equal footing in that experience.
Yes.
I first learnt the Bible and the passages in the Bible, and I'm very grateful for this, through my Hills Christian Life experience and the great writing of people like Darlene.
Yep.
And I would sing these songs and I didn't realise that I was singing biblical scripture. And this was a revelation to me because I hadn't read the Bible. I wasn't in as a new Christian. I didn't understand about that. I had no history of Sunday school. I didn't know whether Jonah was the whale or the person. I got all that stuff muddled up and had no idea. So to learn scripture through song was a very powerful way for me to enter into my first experience of worshipping God was actually through singing. I didn't know any other way. It was my first foray into loving and worshipping God was through song. So I hold that very dear. And I love the idea of what you do at your church and these incredible jazz nights and events that people can come along to into this incredible building and be a part of this really bougie scene that you've got going there. Because people that aren't into God can come along to these events and have this incredible experience.
Yes, they can, because there is different styles. I just want to say, I think that the Uniting Church music that we always sing or whatever when I go to different things, it's as inaccessible as some as of the more recent Pentecostal music.
Yep.
We stand there. And it's not because of my age, because I thought, I'm getting into that old age of what happened to the old stuff.
Yeah.
But I look around and see that it's the people up front are having a good time.
Yeah.
But we're just sort of there. Or it seems to be that there's key words that just have to be in every verse.
Yes.
And that makes it good. And I think we've lost the variety of God.
Interesting.
Part of my daily living and connection with God is through singing.
Yeah, wow.
I will suddenly realise I'm walking along the street and singing, and have to look around, make sure there's no one near. They don't think
Crazy man.
Crazy man. But I just hope they think I've got something
Earbuds in your
that
ears.
I'm talking to someone on the phone. Singing for me, but also silence. But we can talk about that later. Silence is so important. But when people come to say jazz, then it's a different type of experience, because it's there's, I didn't realise, but there's a whole variety of forms of jazz. So each Wednesday night there's a different style of jazz.
Wow.
And that opens up then for people to come and experience it. But they will walk into this building, because our building could be a bit harder to walk into and sit down in. You might come in as a tourist and have a look around and look at the windows and then leave, but to come and sit down, and to sit down in the pews, but to watch a jazz concert in a beautiful setting, the importance there is the people of faith connecting with the people who are coming along to help them recognise that within them there is faith, to help them recognise within them there is this God who loves them absolutely. Within them and within us there are changes for this world to be better, and we can be part of that change by starting.
Yeah, wow.
So it's all these things can happen, but it doesn't happen in the form of a church service traditional or and a sermon as such, but it's making those first connections so people have a sense of belonging. Then hopefully it will lead to a sense of believing and a sense of then serving.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the idea of getting a person simply to believe, but then not move on to using the gift that the Holy Spirit gives them to serve the world for whom Christ died, then I think we're missing the full length of ministry, because they now believe, or a bit step before that, they simply come. So at St. Stephen's we talk about there are admirers. They love the building. They love who we are. They love what we were. And then there are the aligners who love the mission. John Mather, who was president of the Assembly, John used to talk about jumping the counter, that stop being customer, jump the counter and become staff. And that's That's the full length of helping a person belong, believe, jump the counter and become staff, serve. And whilst I might be the ordained person and Tim is the ordained person, we all have a gift of the Holy Spirit, or some have more than one gift. Unlucky for them. and we are called to the basis of union says that, this is how I see it, we will look at the people gathered there, work out with them what the gift is, their passion, who they are, that the Holy Spirit has called them to be. And then we will order the life of the church, and in this case St. Stephen's, and what it does according to those gifts that the Holy Spirit has put in the people that are gathering there.
That's amazing.
And we don't do anything else then.
Yeah, wow.
If someone says, I think God's calling us to do, but we don't have someone with those gifts,
Yes.
then we say to God, God, if you are calling, you'll need to give us someone with
Yes.
those gifts,
Yeah.
rather than we'll struggle to do it because they're doing it somewhere else. Or
Yes, yes.
We can say, that's a great ministry, but it's not what we're called to do. Not out of arrogance, we're not called to do that, but it seems that God hasn't given us people with those gifts.
It's so right, Ken. We had an experience at Uniting Heart and Soul. So we run the mission called Wellness HQ, where we provide free and low-fee counselling and down at Double Bay. So if you're listening and you know somebody that needs counselling, just reach out to me and we can line you up with an appointment. That was a cheeky little plug, Jonty. I hope I don't get in trouble for that.
Plug away.
Yeah.
Plug away.
But God had plonked this mission on us, and I knew this is something we needed to bring to pass. But the irony of that was we employed a psychologist to step in and do it, and then engaged interns at a university to do their clinical placement hours with us as well, so we could see more people. And God plonks a psychiatrist in our congregation. It's like we needed that next step person that was able to do some referral for us and to be the psychiatrist when our psychologist needed to do a referral. It was just broadening the network and broadening our capability as a ministry of hands and feet into the community, into the mental health space. Yes. And we couldn't have done it if God hadn't placed Dr. Chris into the congregation. You can't manufacture that stuff, but God just made that arrangement. I really believe that. It was just so like God. And I have awe and wonder in and around that, that God could plonk one idea and mission, that we would listen obediently, make that mission come to pass, and then God would put the next piece right in our midst.
Yes.
It was just like a bit of Holy Spirit gold.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because you can't make that stuff up, or you can't make that happen.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And to add on to that, it's almost like a parallel story that kind of illustrates the flip side of that is like I'm, as you already know, Ness, part of, I guess you'd call it an alternative faith community. But it's just the evening service at an already established church that the leadership had sort of just been given free rein to do what they wanted. And it's turned out really well. And we get messages to the church all the time saying, can you give us a cheat sheet of how you guys did this? We want to do the same thing at our church. And our response is always, you've completely missed the point. We already had the people and the drive and the energy to do this, and so we just followed the prompting and did it. We could give you a cheat sheet to do this, but it would probably be terrible, not because you guys can't do it, but because there's actually a better thing that you could already do with the gifts and the people that are already in your community.
100%.
Because the lesson there isn't that like, oh, cool, if you give a bunch of early 20-year-olds, free reign of an evening service, they can do incredible things. That is part of what's happened, but it's actually the lesson is we just put our ear to the ground and went, where are the gifts and the callings of the people that are already here? We didn't come up with the idea and then find the people. The people were there first, and we just did the
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
And I have members of my community that hanker back to a time at St. Columba Church, which was the name of our church, when the kids ministry was thriving in the 1980s. It was, 100 kids there.
Almost 50 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. That's a lot of people in church. And why can't we do that, Ness? And I said, well, we can. We can do a thriving kids ministry. A, we need the kids to thrive. And B, we need, how many helpers did you have? Working, able-bodied people? Well, I was doing that in the day, Vanessa, but you're now 85. You can't do that now, And
if you can't, who's going to?
Yeah, it's enough for you just to bring the bread and the juice on a Sunday for communion. That's serving for you, and that's well and good, and we love and appreciate that. But you've got to understand that we can only do the mission based on the hands and feet of the people in the community willing to engage, like you were saying, right?
Yeah. And is that a mission driven by the calling and the giftings of the people in the community, or is it a mission driven by what we used to do?
Correct. So
That's a really important question to ask.
another cheeky thing we've done to evolve that is that Jonty and I just recently, another cheeky plug, Jonty, is we've just filmed 2 pilots of this new kids program, kids podcast that we're doing for all families called On the Way. So on the way to school, on the way to footy, on the way to dance class, plug into the podcast called On the Way and have a meaningful conversation about health and well-being and God. And it's a snappy 12-minute little podcast. But that's meeting the needs of the community now in a way in which we have the facilities, capability, giftings to be able to do it, because we're using the giftings that we already have and collaborating with St. Matthew's Church over at Balcombe Hills. So it's being smart in ministry as well, isn't it, Ken?
Yes.
So is your church flooded with musicians?
No, not flooded with them, but we've got a lot of people who can sing, but the congregation, not all can sing and not all can play instruments. And it's not whilst music is a major, it's not the only major. It's what you're saying. We had a congregational meeting. This reminds me how God does speak through the structures of the church too. We had a congregational meeting, and at that meeting it was commented that at that time there was in Martin Place the people who were sleeping rough had formed a fairly large group of tents and were living in Martin Place. The society, the community, Parliament, people were concerned about this. And at the congregational meeting, it was commented, because it was so close to us, we need to get to know something about homelessness in the city. During that week, and the congregation, orange cards, yes, we're warm to getting to know something about homelessness.
Wow.
Now let's go home and have lunch. And, but I'm not knocking it, but that's how, we...
Organically came about.
Yeah, we thought, we will. That week, Marilyn Smith rang and said, I went to another church and with the idea of serving breakfasts. And we had been at another church, but they've had renovations and there's no room for us anymore. So I went to this other church and they said, you should go and see Ken Day at St. Stephen's. Now, this other church of another denomination, therefore, wasn't at our congregational meeting. But they said, and not because of anything that I have a specialty to do with sleeping rough, except I do think that when I was at the far north, the bus would arrive from the south, say coming up from Taree, Kempsey, about 6 a.m. The phone would ring in the manse. I used to think, is my phone number written under the bridge at Mullumbimby? Ring because Ken Day will get your accommodation.
Wow.
But so I'd come to a new understanding of sleeping rough and what it means for people in different ways. But otherwise, I'd now moved into nice Macquarie Street. That person said, call Ken Day. Marilyn Smith rang me and said, can I talk to you about serving breakfast from St. Stephen's? And we talked. I always take a layperson with me because we're all equally called, even though I might be the ordained person. God has ordained them to be part of this too, and especially part of the leadership of the church.
Yes.
I work with that team of leaders.
Yes.
So I always take someone. We sat with them, took it to the congregation, thinking, how are they going to handle this, serving breakfast in the beautiful Ferguson Hall every morning, Monday to Friday. We'll talk to them. Yep. Yeah, all yeses all the way. Synod, yes, all that. And since then, for about 6 years now, even through COVID, there was only a certain number of months where we couldn't serve, but we don't serve in the hall anymore because our numbers are too big. Each morning, Monday now to Saturday, about 150 to 200 meals are served.
Ken.
Every morning. Hot meal, hot breakfast, cereal, juice, etc. Local restaurants supply food. Parliament supplies food. So we can also give people packages of food to take away to be heated up in microwaves or whatever. Now, that came about by a congregational meeting and God being there and thinking, I'll take you at this. I saw your orange cards.
Wow.
And
What a ministry.
I would have thought, I don't know if this is going to take off in this beautiful heritage building. And a congregation who knows that they've got to caretake this building. But yes, and it's still going.
And Ken, how is that managed? Do you have somebody that heads up that ministry?
Yes, there's a board.
Yes.
And the board has one step away from us, from St. Stephen's board, so that the two talk to each other and we can hear then from each other. And that board has people from our congregation and community groups, companies in Sydney. They all have people on the board, and we have that group call for volunteers, and people from the city volunteer every day. So there's a team of about 6 each morning. They arrive at about 5:30, cook up the meals, start serving from 6:30 to 8, and then they go off to their office for work. People of all ages, CEOs of major airlines to people who are going to be going back because they've retired now, or people who are going to be going into their office where they've just started working for a firm, a variety of people from the congregation and so on, all just do this volunteering. And it's one of those where if someone said, I don't see miracles anymore, they're looking for the leg to be grown 6 inches after prayer, but you want to say, well, you ought to see what happened over with Jonty and Ness, because they had a counselling service wanting it, and someone turns up.
Yeah, that's right.
God
plonked there.
Yeah. We have a congregational meeting, show orange cards, Marilyn
Feeding
Smith's
150
rings.
people.
I think
These
are miracles. This is there used to be a singing group called Second Chapter of Acts. We are the third chapter, fourth chapter of Acts. Because we are and I think that's why going through COVID, we coped well in a very difficult time for the world, because we thought we need to be a church like in the book of Acts, that you never know what's going to happen. You don't know what's around the corner. But we know we're not going to be like we were yesterday in 2 years' time, because the world is changing, and that's what God's called us to be in. And so music, we certainly have music, but we have this other side to us. And now we're thinking, what's the next side? Not because we always have to be doing more, but as God brings along new people, we were just looking at, this year, we have had 6 baptisms in the last 3-4 months, and 4 of them are all believers' baptisms. We can just see the Lord is bringing along to the congregation like God is doing into other congregations. So we have to say to God, what are the gifts within these people? Because is there something within these people that you're calling us to do, and that's why you're sending them?
Yeah, 100%. I just did some cheeky maths. You've fed like 208. What's that number? 280,000 meals over 6 years. That's a lot of breakfast.
It's a lot of breakfast. A lot of bacon cooking going on down in that kitchen down there.
It's extraordinary,
Yeah.
you know. That ministry, I don't know if we in the wider church and the community of Sydney, does everybody know about this, Ken?
No.
How can people help? How can people hook into this and help the ministry?
Volunteering?
Yes. And who would they reach out to, Ken?
Yes, they could email to the church.
Yep.
And I would direct them to Marilyn.
Yep.
That's one way. It's an early rise. It's called the Early Bird Breakfast, Early Bird Cafe.
That really suits people that are early morning people.
Yes. It's not every day.
No.
Like, whilst it's open, they're not expected to be there every day.
Of course,
some
but there's a
serve
roster.
weekly, some serve fortnightly, some monthly, some come for the very earliest, some come halfway through to do the clean-up. Or,
wow.
You know.
It's a big enterprise, isn't it? I think about Wayside and I think about Exodus and I think about what happens down at Wesley. St. Stephen's is doing a major hands and feet ministry into the people of Sydney, city of Sydney. It's just epic, Ken.
And all volunteer.
Yes.
Whilst I'm the casual teacher, the casual roster.
Love
so
it.
I on the WhatsApp, if they need someone,
You step
I'll
in.
fill in that one.
Yeah, great.
Because with my style of work,
Yes.
I can be flexible,
Yep.
especially that time of morning. But when the people are all volunteers,
Yeah.
that we haven't employed a person to oversee it.
Yes.
I find that amazing.
Yeah, people's willingness to love the other.
Yes.
Which I think is just
Yes.
a beautiful testament to what you're doing over at St. Stephen's. That's just really incredible. And did it just spread word of mouth?
Yeah,
Through the homeless community?
Yes, through their community.
Yeah, yeah.
And our neighbours in neighbouring buildings, very supportive.
Yes.
One day after worship, this lady came up to me and she said, I'm very disappointed. And I said, what did I say? And she said, I wasn't in there. And she said, but you're feeding criminals. And I said, feeding criminals? And she said, yes, I know they are. I said, how do you know? And so we had this conversation. But she was so stunned when I said, well, we're just doing what Jesus wants us to do. Because she was wanting to say, you're supposed to be a church.
Yeah, I know.
But you feed, and she couldn't see, I think your image of the church is different. And perhaps when I said to her, when she said, you're feeding criminals, and I said, we've all got criminals in our family, haven't we? I think she, excuse me. But she couldn't see the people who are sleeping rough are us.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we have tiles or slate or whatever over our head at night, but we're only a few steps away from also sleeping rough.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and if people say no, not me, we are so solid. Remember
Be very
back to
careful.
COVID.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who thought
A lot
that
can
within
happen
a
in a
couple of
year.
weeks
Yeah.
we would all be in this changed world?
Yeah, 100%.
And it's the same. And is it not the same then that there will come a time when Christ himself says, consummation of all things.
Yeah.
Enough.
I would
a
love
changed world.
I would love to partner with you, Ken, in that ministry because we don't have the capacity to feed people in Mallara, although we we do what we can when the need arises in our very bougie community down there in Wallara, but we can definitely help with the mental health piece. So if your ministry of feeding, if there's ever a need for people that you're feeding to have counselling, we can provide that for free of charge.
Well, that would be great.
And so if there's some way that we can work together, I would feel that that would even grow our joint ministries in a way that we're really meeting the needs of the Sydney's least of these community.
Because some people do need that conversation. Once a week, St Vincent's Hospital sends a van over for medical, and they send a group. Once a week, the orange van comes for washing, and also a van comes on another day so everyone can get their phones fixed up and charged, because people need phones. When some people say, "Oh, how come they say they haven't got anything, but they've got mobile phones." Well, if you haven't got a mobile phone today, you're really up the creek when you've got to contact government agencies or whatever.
That's right.
It's helping them have a phone that's going and charged and that.
And actually, how dare you judge that they shouldn't have a phone?
Yeah.
Who are you? I'm just like, what is that?
Yes.
You know? Good heavens.
Yes. There's a song I think it might be another one of Porter's Gates, but it says, it's a new day, put the judge up on the shelf. Leave the judge there and go out into the new day.
Love it.
That grace upon grace upon grace.
100%, Ken. Speaking my language. Can I tell you, this has been such a fulfilling conversation. It's revelatory to me about the feeding ministry and the music ministry. You're just doing such beautiful things in the community that we can all connect in with. And if you're a listener and you're hearing about this ministry and you want to, God's prompting you to help the ministry at St Stephen's, please reach out. Jonty will pop all the show notes, all the information where you can contact Ken or Tim or Marilyn to jump in and get on board and get involved. Before we wrap up, I sounded like a host then. I've had a moment. Sorry. Did I steal your gig?
No.
That was weird. I just went there. I didn't even know that I was doing it.
That was fantastic.
Good heavens,
Are
Jonty.
they your spiritual gifts to
I don't
host?
know. That was odd. But I just wanted to ask you. Now I'm embarrassed. Ken, what are you grateful for?
Well, I am grateful. I am grateful out of something we've said today, because I said I like to walk around singing. I'm glad I can still sing, not well, but I'm glad I can remember. I failed maths all the way through high school, so numbers are not my thing. But I can remember whole conversations. Like that annoys people because I can quote back. But you said, but I've realised how much I've learned through song, and I can sing to my kids. Say, "Dad, how come you know up to the 5th verse of that hymn?"
Yeah, wow.
I just
So,
but I think it's part of the way I can just praise and be in touch with God and be lost in wonder, love and praise.
Amen.
So I'm grateful that I can still sing. I'm grateful also for silence. A few years back, I did a simple course on meditation, one where I wouldn't have to sit cross-legged or go away on retreats, but I found someone who was able to teach, guide, and be understanding that my mind wanders very quickly. But each morning I am able to get up. Fortunately, I'm an early riser, and go and sit and be still. And then move into the day. I am grateful for that, for blue sky, for the trees. I live in a built-up area, but people have trees that they're not allowed to chop down, which I just look at, and they're growing and they're cutting our view, and we won't be able to see the city skyline anymore, but I love the trees more. I am so grateful for that, and grateful that today I have my family. And we are still they are just so beautiful to me and to Sue.
It's gorgeous.
And today.
Yeah.
I'm not holding them to that forever. When I becam
Destruction's still on the horizon
than I am
potential.
now. Yeah.
You're a funny man. You're a funny man.
Yeah. So I am grateful for that. Yeah. And grateful for the church and neighbours. You're our neighbouring parish in a way.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
I
I love it.
Yeah.
It's been such a joy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
one of the great things of the networking, that's possible within the Uniting Church, and I'm sure other denominations, but the way we're set up so that we can network. And soon it'll be networking from the ocean to Broken Hill.
Yeah, won't we?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we twin with Narromine congregation, so I see that as not a very big stretch.
Yeah.
We have meetings. We'll meet in Orange and have a meeting
Yeah.
with the two, and that's always great fun.
Yeah, wow.
We could talk for another hour, and I would love to dangle a carrot in front of perhaps you and also our listener that I'd love to do this again, because I'd love to spend some more time talking to you about particularly your formation and what Ken was doing in his early 20s and what led to ordination. I think that's a fascinating story that I'm excited to talk about it at another time.
I'll bring photos,
Oh,
so you
great.
can say, Jonty will now put it on the screen. I can tap
And
it.
from school teacher to reverend. I want to know about that piece.
Yeah. So we'll dangle that carrot as something we'll hopefully try and line up at some point in the future.
Sure.
But for now, thanks so much for being here. We
Oh,
appreciate
thank you. You were easy to talk to. yeah.
Thanks a lot,
Back at
Ken.
you, brother.
And we're back. That was our interview with Reverend Ken Day.
Isn't he epic?
He's great. Yeah. And I we will have him back at some point, because I think the plan today partly was to talk to him about his calling and how his calling has changed since he was ordained in, I think he said 1984, in his 20s.
24.
Yeah. I think there's lots of interesting stuff we could learn from.
He's got quite a
talking to Ken
story that we
about
need
some
to
of
have
that
him
stuff.
back.
Yeah. But yeah, if you have like you said earlier in this, if you want to get involved with anything at St. Stephen's, whether it's the food, the breakfast stuff,
Or music.
or anything, or if you just have any questions or follow-ups you want to chat to Ken about, we'll have some stuff down below that you can get in touch, or just email us as usual at the usual address, filthyhopepod@gmail.com, and if there's anything there for Ken, we'll send it through. If you want to support us, because we want to keep doing this forever and ever and ever, because we love doing it, and your support enables us to do that, great ways of doing that are by praying for us. Trying to say that every week now because it's so important. You can buy a piece of merch. We've got still some shirts from our first run of shirts and some caps at our web store. Link for that down below. Or you can come hang out at a live show. We've got a handful of live shows left this year. The links for all of that are down below as well, in the usual place as well. On the church website, if you want to come to a live show, the merch is slightly cheaper in person because you don't have to pay for shipping. So it's cheaper and you get to hang out with us. So I think it's a win-win.
So cool.
Yeah. And obviously leave us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. That makes a huge difference. That if you do, we'll give you a shout out and read it out on the show. Anything else you want to leave us with before we head out this week, Ness?
Just have a great week, everybody. Have a terrific week.
Yeah, likewise. Have a great week, and we'll see you, if you're a listener of Into the Word, tomorrow for some more Book of Acts shenanigans. If not, right back here on Tuesday next week for our next episode of Filthy Hope. We'll see you then.
This is a prayer for the people who want to give up, who have been hurt beyond repair and cannot bear to see your face in anything. Find peace in letting go of the guilt that is in yours, and find hope in understanding. Life is not a game you have to win. Forgiveness overwhelming, salvation not deserving. You are loved by something beyond, someone beyond understanding. Drink deep.